One of the quiet lessons that emerged during the Korean War was that armies still underestimated how much ordinary soldiers relied on what they carried on their bodies, not what doctrine promised would arrive later. Cold weather casualties, hunger, and exhaustion exposed a truth that planners preferred to forget. Survival often hinged on small, unofficial items carried in pockets and bags. That reality didn't begin in Korea. It was inherited directly from the Red Army experience of World War II, where the humble bread bag often mattered more than official supply tables. If you're here for that kind of overlooked history, the kind that explains how wars are actually endured rather than how they're summarized, this is a good time to subscribe to Backyard Wisdom. This channel exists for people who want to understand the systems and habits that kept soldiers alive when plans failed. The Red Army bread bag was never just for bread. Officially, the Soviet bread bag, or chlebny meshok, was meant to carry rations. In practice, by 1944, it had become a personal survival container shaped by scarcity, improvisation, and experience. Veterans understood that anything not physically on them might never reach them again. Trucks broke down, depots burned, and units advanced faster than logistics could follow. The bread bag became the place where a soldier stored the things that actually got him through long marches, nights in foxholes, and unpredictable combat. Many of these items never appeared in regulations, but they appeared again and again in memoirs and recovered kits. So, extra cloth actually mattered more than official bandages. One of the most common unofficial items found in Red Army bread bags was, well, spare cloth. This might be torn linen, an old undershirt, or even civilian fabric taken earlier in the war. Official first aid supplies were honestly inconsistent, and individual medical kits were often missing or just incomplete. Cloth served, multiple purposes. It could be used as an improvised bandage, a foot wrap to prevent frostbite, or insulation inside boots. Soldiers who survived long enough learned that clean cloth was almost a form of currency, traded or saved depending on need. This habit later echoed in Korean War accounts, where soldiers again relied on improvised insulation and bandaging under really extreme conditions. Salt and loose tobacco were survival tools, not luxuries. Salt appeared frequently in bread bags, often wrapped carefully in paper or cloth. It preserved food when fresh rations were unavailable and helped replace minerals lost during those long marches. Tobacco, whether for smoking or, trading, served both morale and practical purposes. Loose tobacco could be exchanged for food, information, or favors. It could also repel insects when burned or packed into clothing seams. These uses rarely appear in official histories, but, they really shaped daily survival. The Red Army soldier understood something modern survivalists still recognize: morale and barter matter as much as calories. Personal eating tools replaced broken supply chains. Spoons were among the most guarded items a Soviet soldier owned. Official mess equipment was often lost or damaged, and eating without a spoon meant wasted food and energy. Many soldiers carried a personal spoon wrapped in cloth inside their bread bag. Some spoons were homemade, carved from wood or aluminum scrap. Others were scavenged or taken from civilians earlier in the war. This small object reduced friction in daily life and conserved strength. In extreme cold, even minor inconveniences could become dangerous. Paper and pencil quietly shaped survival and memory. Scraps of paper, notebooks, or pencils were common, but rarely discussed. Soldiers used them to write letters, record names, sketch positions, or keep track of days. Writing anchored identity in conditions designed to erase it. From a psychological standpoint, this mattered enormously. Maintaining a sense of continuity helped soldiers endure prolonged stress. Later military studies would recognize this effect, but Red Army soldiers discovered it instinctively. Repair items kept uniforms functional long past their intended life. Needles, thread, and bits of wire often appeared in bread bags. Uniform replacement was unreliable, especially during rapid advances in 1944. torn boots, ripped coats, and broken straps could mean exposure or injury. Simple repair tools, really extended the life of issued gear and reduced dependence on supply depots. This self-sufficiency became a defining feature of Red Army survival culture and, honestly, influenced post-war Soviet military expectations. Despite the Soviet state's secular stance, many soldiers carried small icons, photographs, or personal tokens. These items offered emotional grounding and a sense of protection, whether symbolic or psychological. Their presence does not contradict official ideology as much as it reveals, the limits of ideology under fire. When survival is uncertain, people carry what helps them endure. This pattern repeats across wars and cultures. Food scraps reflected adaptation to unpredictable rations. Dried bread crusts, bits of dried fish, or even scavenged civilian food often filled unused corners of bread bags. These items were not part of official rations, but acted as emergency reserves. Soldiers learned to eat whenever food was available, not when scheduled. This habit later appeared in other conflicts where supply lines were stretched thin, reinforcing the lesson that rigid rationing fails under pressure. The bread bag became a personal logistics system. By 1944, Red Army soldiers treated the bread bag as a decentralized supply cache. Each item inside represented a lesson learned the hard way. What survived repeated campaigns tended to stay. What failed disappeared. This informal system compensated for industrial and logistical gaps and allowed units to remain functional under extreme strain. It also shifted responsibility downward, placing survival partly in the hands of individual soldiers. Why these forgotten items still matter. The contents of a Red Army bread bag tell us more about real wartime survival than many operational maps. They show how soldiers adapted when doctrine and logistics fell short. These habits influenced later conflicts, including Korea, where soldiers again relied on personal improvisation to survive cold, hunger, and isolation. Modern military planning still grapples with this balance between centralized supply and individual resilience. Understanding these small items helps us understand how wars are actually lived, not just how they are planned. If you value this kind of grounded, detail-driven history, subscribe to Backyard Wisdom and share this video. Remembering these overlooked stories matters because the next generation always pays for what we fail to understand.